All right. Hi, Danica.
Hi, Sam.
It's good to see you here. So,
Thank you.
I'm just getting things started here. We are starting our broadcast and our live stream. So we'll have people be joining us here shortly. Okay. Well, I know that you're down in in a warm spot right now, and we just got some snow at my place last night and here in Colorado. And I know you're down in the Phoenix area, which is this is a wonderful
Yeah,
time of year.
no snow here. It's actually a beautiful time of year. It's about sunny and 75.
Nice. Hi, Daniel. Good morning. All right. So we have some bad news today. So Jules is not going to be able to join us today. She is on set. As many of our listeners know, she is an actress and producer. So she's quite busy, and but she's on set today. She'll join us next week. All right. Well, we're right at the top of the hour. So I'm going to go ahead and start the broadcast, and we can begin our conversation here. So let's get started. All right. So to start things off, I want to welcome everyone to the People Strategy Forum. We have a great show today to go through. First, I just want to talk a little bit about what the People Strategy Forum is. We're a mastermind of leaders that we come together and we find ways to enhance the workplace, make the workplace a better and happier place for our employees, and so that we can be higher performing and deliver better for our clients and customers. So it's a little bit about what we're all about here at the People Strategy Forum. And I want to introduce our speakers today, our hosts. So in addition to myself, my name is Sam Reeve. I'm a compensation expert. I also deal a lot in people strategies and talent management. I've been doing that for the past 20 years or so. Started off a lot of large companies and such as Barclays, BlackRock, and so forth. But now I'm down and working with some of the startups and making sure that people get a good foothold in the marketplace, and so that they can grow and grow responsibly and safely and create a great place for their people. And we also have Shar Miller, one of our other hosts. Shar is the owner of Rocky Mountain Health Advocates, and she is a people strategist. She does some, we're lucky enough to have her skill set here at CompTeam, and she works with us from time to time. And so it's great to have Shar here. She's a dynamic leader, does coaching on leadership coaching and so forth. And she's an expert in remote work. And so she coaches managers on how to handle their staff remotely and better communicate and so forth. So a lot of experience that Shar has to offer.
Yeah, good morning and good afternoon. Buenos dias, buenas tardes, and buenas noches.
Great. And our speaker today, we have Danica Williams. And so Danica is out of the Phoenix area. She is from Novus Leaf. She is a trained psychologist. And as you can see, she has a broad background in psychology. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But Danica advises many companies and nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and on a variety of different things. So anywhere from personal needs, such as in the difficulties in pregnancy and so forth, to coaching teams and businesses on how to get established and move forward. So very lucky to have Danica here today to share our knowledge. We're going to be talking about the important topic of selecting team members with the right mindset for your growing company. Now, before we start getting into that conversation, just a few things that I want to cover here at the forum. We are multicasting across many platforms. So you can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and also YouTube, so that we're doing a live feed. And also in a couple of weeks from now, this will be turned into our podcast that you'll see on wherever your favorite podcast provider is, the People Strategy Forum. So since we're on multiple platforms, please feel free to, if you're on the Zoom platform right now, you can leave your questions in the chat as we're going through the conversation today, and we'll bring those up during the conversation. And and if you happen to be in one of the other platforms that we're multi-streaming through, like LinkedIn and so forth, just feel free to leave your questions in there, and we'll do our best to get to those as soon as possible. All right, as we get started with no more to do, Danica, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in helping people and businesses.
Sure. So I actually worked for the Boeing company for many years, and worked, sort of in the corporate arena, and then career changed and went into psychology. And so that's how I got started in the helping field. And I started out working in the hospital setting. So I worked with, as you mentioned, women with issues in their pregnancies, fetal loss, things like that, and then went into private practice for myself. But before I made the transition into the hospital setting, I worked or ran a small nonprofit up in the Pacific Northwest called the Northwest Women's Business Center. And we were a U.S. Small Business Administration funded program that helped businesses to start, grow, or sustain. And at the end, for startups, we would help them, we would connect them with our parent company and help them to obtain the capital that they needed to fund their businesses. It was specifically geared toward minorities and women, just to kind of give them that extra hand up. So that's kind of how I got started.
Well, that sounds excellent. I'm very proud of you to, one, not only have that very corporate perspective, but then to blend the psychology interest with supporting minorities and women, and really supporting individuals in that sense, because that right now is a very, very important topic.
Yeah,
It's all over the media, and I'm so glad there's such just an awareness that's really come to light. So I would assume that you really have probably seen a huge interest in your expertise.
I have, yeah, and it's really neat to be able to combine those two backgrounds, and the background from the corporate arena, just understanding business in general, and then from the business development area as well, and economic development. Just to be able to combine those with the psychology, it's been really interesting how I've been able to help businesses and HR departments really to function at a higher level.
Yeah. One of the really important things in starting out a new business, and I know I've experienced this in my 10 years of running my own company. At the beginning, when you're starting out, I mean, there's lots of things that you don't know, right? I mean, and there's a lot of insecurities that you have in starting that business. Geez, am I doing this right? Gosh, this is so hard. Oh, I dropped the ball on that. It's like there's these ups and downs that we have to do. So it's not just running the business, but it's the mindset that we have to manage. The person on your shoulder that is saying, hey, you're not good enough, you're not doing it right. And I think that Danica, you've probably experienced a lot of this, as in like the rest of the world in starting new businesses. There's a lot of failures in the first few years, and I think that a lot of that is probably around that psychology that they have, the mindset. Would you agree?
I would agree, and that is why the psychology background really does come in handy when we think about things like cognitive behavioral therapy and what's our internal dialogue, what are we telling ourselves, what are we thinking, and the thought that what we think influences how we feel, which influences how we behave or what our outcomes are. And so, yes, absolutely. I've worked with many companies on just changing internal dialogue. What are you telling yourselves? And I've had to assign, just do some positive affirmations, tell yourself that you can do this, you can achieve. When that self-doubt starts to creep in, you can sort of build yourself up.
Right. So important. As Americans, I think that we've been a little bit slower to to adopt some of these important practices of mindfulness, and there's a lot of other countries that have been that leaders, have adapted, meditation and mindfulness as part of their daily practice, and these things, because we know, and also just in the balance of humanity, right? I mean, and we know that more than ever now. And we have, it's not just work, but work gets impacted by our family and our relationships with others, and our own personal health, physical and mental. And so there's a lot of things that we bring to the workplace that we didn't acknowledge in the past. In the past, I think that, if we go back to the 1950s, they're like, oh, okay, you keep that separate. That business belongs in the home environment. But now we know that it's important to look at both these things.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was working at the hospital, I started out working with patients, and then I launched a program within the hospital setting to work with the hospital executives and leadership team, the managers who were very, very stressed. And when I love how you bring up mindfulness and talk about mindfulness and the importance of that. It is so important. I mean, if we just break down the science that we have to back up mindfulness, we always thought about the Buddhist monks and how they improved so much by the way they were, able to set aside that time to meditate, and you could see, the benefits in that. And so we actually have the science that backs that up now, as we take that deep breath in, and hold it, and then exhale as our bellies expand. We're pushing those vital organs up against our vagus nerve that sends a signal to the brain that says activate your body's internal cool down system, which is your parasympathetic nervous system. So much today we live in the fight or flight response, which is your body's sympathetic nervous system. We're stuck there. We're very highly connected. We're going all the time, and leaders need to know that they can take a step back, that they perform better. That they can achieve more if they can take a step back and relax, as opposed to being stressed 24/7. And it's important that our HR departments know that. It's important that our executive team knows that, that you have the ability to perform better if you can take a deep breath, and set aside time for work-life balance and mindfulness and reducing stress.
Well, I have to say that in my former life as more of an HR business partner or a chief HR officer, the word psychology and behavioral health. I also, by the way, you don't know me, but I also come from a very heavy healthcare background with Banner Health and Kaiser Permanente. And I remember the only thing that we really talked about in the psychology sense was the EAP program, the Employee Assistance Program. And usually it was just a pamphlet that maybe we got from our benefits department. So for example, if there was, not to sound sad here, but if there was a suicide, or if there was a tragedy with an employee's family, like their house burning down, which is very real here in Colorado, right? But we would just hand out an EAP pamphlet to our employees and say, okay, deal with it. But remember, you still have to be at work tonight for your 12-hour shift as a nurse working in the ER, despite, your emotional challenges. As we know with the pandemic and everything we're dealing with now, this need is only intensified, even, quadruple fold. Just an HR department that hands out an EAP brochure is not going to be anything needed to support employees with the traumas, the challenges of taking care of their patients, as well as their own personal dilemmas with their own mental health and their family strains, and not only for the leaders, but also all the employees. So my mindset has definitely shifted from a decade ago to today.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think what you're doing is amazing.
Yeah, and I think it's really important too, because as we know, mental health and the request for mental health services has quadrupled during the pandemic, and so it's hard to really connect with a therapist, and sometimes you have to meet people where they are, especially highly qualified, highly capable people. They have a really difficult time reaching out. And so when someone reaches out and says, I need help, and you hand them that EAP packet, well, who knows? By the time they get home, by the time they get off, are they really going to make that call if they make that call, our service is going to be available. Do they have to wait a week? We've seen, a lot of issues with that. And so it's helpful to have something, or at least have HR, sort of in the process and understanding what's happening, which is kind of what we did with the hospital. We had them be able to, if they had stress, they could come straight to my office. So we could deal with it right then, on the spot. And it was great. I set up a space that was very calming, very welcoming. People would step out of the ICU completely stressed. You could see it, in their physical bodies. I'd shut the door, I'd leave the lights on, just do natural light. And then you could start to see in about 5 or 10 minutes, the stress just melt off of them. People aren't meant to withstand under chronic stress like that. And that's just not in the healthcare industry, but across all industries, we need to do a better job of supporting our people.
Yeah. Well,
so I'm sorry. Help me understand this. What was your title at the time when you were doing that kind of support? Because we did not have that kind of position available. And us HR business partners, even though I have a minor in psychology, we're definitely not the qualified reps to be dealing with those types of things. So what was your position at the time?
Yeah, so I wore a number of hats. My position was just called licensed counselor. It was a program and a position that I started myself. So there wasn't anything before I came into the picture. So again, I started out working with patients across various units, including hospice and the ICU. And then I took on this role and grew this program from the bottom up. And so what you would need is probably just like a social worker. They probably don't even need to be licensed, but well, actually they might. I think it depends on your state. Licensing rules are different across the states. And so like a licensed master social worker or clinical social worker or a licensed professional counselor. It was kind of a unique setting because it was the hospital setting. So I was already there working with patients. So it was easy for me just to be pulled over. You might not have that. Most companies don't have a licensed professional counselor working for them. But they could consider starting a program like that or having a role like that. We saw a tremendous reduction in turnover with the services that I was providing.
So you were partnered with HR then, it sounds like
I was.
You had kind of a collaborative role. Well, that's very fascinating because you and I should talk about that because I was the HR person over the behavioral health department. So that was around 100 employees. So I knew their capabilities and their competencies and their skill set. But I also knew that I had these HR matters and I had anywhere between 1,000 to 3,000 employees and I was dealing with overworked, whatever. I could have used your support myself. But
the research supports that reduction in turnover. Absolutely.
That's amazing.
So we definitely need to talk more about that. And I think, I think as we're diving into this topic, I mean, there's really good room for today's type of psychological or an approach or a mental health approach to having higher performance in organizations today. So I think that there's definitely a way we need to talk more about this. But one thing, as we are going toward our topic of hiring for the right mindset, I think you bring up a really good point. First, you need to understand what the mindset is in our current environment. Now, of course, all companies are different. All organizations are different. We can say that, oh yeah, they should be thinking about the humanistic approach and so forth. But the fact is that many companies are not, right? They don't have that culture in place. They haven't moved towards that. Maybe they have aspirations of becoming that in the future, but that could take some time for them to adopt it. So they need to hire people that are going to survive in the environment that they have, whether it's high stress, high crisis, and so forth. And so I think that's important to talk about. But one thing before we get there, I think that we need to recognize the time that we're in, right? So 5 years ago, of course, we didn't have in the United States, at least, we didn't have a lot of pressures that were coming down on us that are outside the workforce. And when I'm talking about now, we have We have the pandemic that's been weighing on us for a number of years. We're trying to come to terms with that. We have instability that's happening across the globe in different areas, whether as a result of economic stress or even potential conflict, as we see right now with the Ukraine. I mean, I have clients that have locations in the Ukraine right now, and I can just imagine what their employees are thinking. It's like, well, geez, we're going to get invaded tomorrow, and on top of the pandemic, I have something else to worry about. This type of stress is part of that work environment, and we need to consider that when we're bringing people in to the organization. So, what do you think about that, Danica?
Sure, there's a lot going on. I mean, in addition to the things that you mentioned, we had, a pretty divisive election. So, America was really sort of on two different sides for a little bit, and we had the George Floyd killing, and there were protests happening all across the world on top of this global pandemic. So yeah, I think it really helps to have people who are solid and grounded, and know how to deal with stress. And again, I think if we can, whatever services that we can add in the workplace are helpful. If it's coaching, employee coaching on stress management, things like that, that can be really helpful as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would also think that from a hiring perspective, I think having, as you bring up some of the diversity aspects and bias, and hiring individuals that have tolerance for diversity in the workplace and working with a diverse population, hiring an employee that is respectful to others for different political beliefs, or respectful to others for different beliefs, even about the simple, well, it's not simple, it's very complexities of the vaccinations right now, which is a very hot political topic. Are you vaxxed? Are you not vaxxed? And if I'm going to deal with you or work with the public, I believe that particular topic is really intensifying. And although I don't necessarily work in a traditional corporate setting right now, I can only imagine some of the adversities that are happening in the departments, as well as how, from a hiring perspective, how a new hire is coming into that working environment and adapting to that perhaps psychology unrest within that organization.
Yeah.
So, we talk a lot about something called the TMA, but there's many other types of personality assessments or various other tools. But I think really having a critical conversation with your new hires, since that's what we're talking about today, to really analyze, is this kind of environment going to be a good fit for you? Are you going to be comfortable with this organization? How are we going to help you adapt? Are you going to blend well with your team? I think having those types of tools as we're looking at the hiring is going to be so critical moving forward, more than it was like 5 years ago, as Sam and I were talking about. So
yeah, I agree with that. I used to administer the DISC personality profile, so trying to help teams understand where to put people, what roles use their best and highest gifts, and so I think you're right, though. We're going to have to look at it from more than just a perspective of where do you fit in terms of the kind of work that you prefer. We're going to have to look at those personality profiles in terms of, how are you going to fit in general with this team, and how are you going to blend in with sort of the culture that's in this organization.
Mm-hmm. And so when you're advising your clients on that, Danica, where do you start? I mean, are there steps that you go through, or how can we help our listeners?
Where do I start in terms of helping them with the DISC profile, or just
helping them understand the overall approach and hiring the right mindset for their company?
Sure. And I have slides if you want me to share my screen at this time.
Sure, go ahead if you'd like.
Okay. Okay, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, so that's just a little bit about myself, but I have sort of a few key things that I'd like to talk about today. So when I talk about hiring people, the right people for your growing company, I think of three basic things. So one is hiring people with that entrepreneurial mindset or a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. The other is hiring people who have sort of been there and done that. And the other is the importance of hiring a diverse workforce. And so I'll put that up for you. And so let's just jump right in with hiring people with the entrepreneurial mindset. So what is an entrepreneurial mindset or a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset? So having the growth mindset means that you believe that your talents, your intelligence, those kind of things can be improved over time and with work, versus a fixed mindset that believes sort of what you're born with is what you get, and you really can't make much of a difference in that. So having a growth mindset or an entrepreneurial mindset means that or leads to sort of embracing flaws and mistakes as opportunities for growth. You see them as opportunities to grow and learn and improve. You are accepting setbacks that you might incur or failures that you might have as an opportunity to learn and grow as well. You feel empowered to reach your goals, which is really important, and you believe that effort leads to mastery. So those are some really important things to have or to be looking for, and someone who's got that growth mindset. Qualities, we're looking for people who are builders and developers. They see the vision that you have for your company and they want to grow that with you. And then we can break into sort of different qualities that you can look for as well, individual qualities.
Yeah, I think that entrepreneurial mindset is so important in starting companies, and it's what a lot of companies don't consider. Often they're looking at and towards your next topic here is a person that's been there, done that. Sometimes when we're looking for that expertise, somebody working at a larger company that is more structured, and then we're asking them to step into a really an unstructured environment. There's startups often don't have policies and procedures. They're developing those as they go. There's a lot of ambiguity and not a lot of hand-holding. And so having a person that is a self-starter and can survive in that environment is quite important.
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk about having been there and done that, you've got people who have expertise in key areas. That's really important. They're grounded. They're often multi-skilled and adaptable. Those things are all really important. You don't really have time in a startup to worry about growing your talent. I guess it kind of depends on the industry, but a lot of times you want someone who can just step in and hit the ground running. When we talk about those qualities, we want people who take risks. We want people who are decisive, people who are problem solvers, solution focused, take accountability, confident, resilient, have humility, that kind of thing. Those are all really important qualities.
Agreed. Yeah.
And one of the words that I think about all the time is that, back when we talked about change management is now very different today. Every day something is changing in our work environment. And so having an employee that has the agility and the adaptability to continually modify how they're doing their profession and their expertise is going to be so critical when we're hiring as well.
Yeah. Yep. Self-motivated. They view mistakes as a part of the process. That's all very important. And they can kind of help you grow. What I also like about, having people who have been there or done that is they can often add on to your strengths and sometimes pick up in key areas where you need improvement. And they just bring a diverse, diverse ideas to the table. Which kind of leads into the next thing, which is the importance of hiring a diverse work team. There is so many reasons that is important. And so if we can talk about those for just a minute. When we think of diversity, especially in today's world of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, we often just think of racially, culturally, ethnically, which is very, very important. But I also think it's important to have diverse ideas. So people who come from different backgrounds, who maybe understand something from a different perspective. So diversity of thought, diversity of experience is also really important as well.
Yeah, I've heard the new phrase of cognitive diversity. So actually having people in the workforce that have that you mentioned think differently, and that also can be from a more of a even in a disability mindset, what we call some of these disabilities, or we label them as disabilities.
Neurodiversity.
Yeah, neurodiversity, such as, there's like ADHD and so forth, and a lot of people carry around that as a label that, it may be some way they're deficient, but in fact that they think quite differently, right? And then that diversity brings in new ideas and innovation into the workforce as we're bringing people with different types of mindsets and so forth.
Absolutely. People with ADHD are often brilliant. We'll sometimes label them as twice gifted, where they may have sort of a deficit on one end, but they make it up on the other end. And so absolutely having diversity of thought and that neurodiversity in the workplace is really important.
Yeah, I think that's a common thing that we see in nature, right? When we lose a sense, or if we have a sense that's impaired, then our other senses become heightened, right? To make up for that. So diversity has a way of really enhancing the workplace. I think that's been proven over and over again.
Yeah, and if you talk, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was wondering, do you think it's a stereotype that most of our executives, and particularly CEOs, have ADHD? Because I always hear that. Is that a stereotype, or is that true?
I don't hear that as a stereotype, but often there is neurodiversity there. I will say that.
Well, they certainly act like they have ADD, right? So they're running from one issue.
Serves them well. Yeah, I think those people who, when you talk about people who have ADHD, I mean, you think about the amount of things that they're able to juggle at once. People who don't have that neurodiversity would probably not be able to do that. So there's a space for everyone.
Right.
At the table.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing is it just brings new perspectives, a wider talent pool that you can choose from. When we do talk about cultural, ethnic differences, things like that, you think about the different worldviews that people have and the experiences that they have. And what we know is that as you bring them to the table, you're able to better problem solve, which leads to increased profit. I mean, there are so many proven benefits to having a diverse workforce.
Mm-hmm. And there's one thing you mentioned earlier, as far as some of the conflicts that we've had, especially here in the United States, as far as the being polarized and politically and so forth. And I think that one thing that really has damaged our society over the past few years is the inability to reach across the aisle, as they say in politics, and really have meaningful conversations. And I think that's one thing that's a threat to our workplaces, because it is important to have people of different mindsets, different ideas. And then when we come together, that's when we find our greatest strength and innovation. And so I hope that we haven't lost that in the United States. I hope that does come back. What is your impression of that, Danica?
Yeah, my impression is that we just don't have enough bridge builders, right? We need people who are willing to reach across the aisle and say, hey, I have my perspective, but I'm willing to listen and learn. And I think part of, we can go down a rabbit hole with this, but I think part of what has added to that demise is social media. And if you've ever watched the documentaries on how social media was created and what it was meant to do and the algorithms that are out there, so you're looking through your feeds, your various social media feeds, and you're seeing everything that you want to see, because that's what the algorithms were designed. So when you're looking at someone else and they have a different perspective, or they stand on the other side of the aisle, it's like, well, how can they not see what's going on? Well, because they're really not seeing what's going on. They're only seeing what they have liked and shared and all of that. And so that's the continual feed that they're getting. So you really are seeing two different worlds, depending on what side of the aisle that you're on. And unfortunately, that leads to that sort of all or nothing, us or them thinking. Well, I'm in the know and they're not in the know. How can they believe this? And yeah, it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, isn't that so strange? And when we think about it in the way of diversity, we have a society that is increasingly believing that diversity is so important. Yet some of these social media vehicles and channels that we're on are quite the opposite, and
Yeah.
are designed that way purposefully. I wonder if there's a way for us to build a mindset around that, to change the way we practice our lives, to bring that in a more healthier balance.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with the bridge builders that we have modeling behavior, and modeling that reaching across the aisle and let's work together to get this done. Let's remember who we are as Americans. We're one, and we've always gotten through difficult times, and I think it helps too, just to kind of educate and understand why people might feel differently, in terms of, just understanding. I don't know if you guys watched that documentary that was put out about, and I can't think of the title of it right now, but it kind of just explained how social media came to be and the algorithms, and it really makes you think, wow, like I didn't even realize that I'm in this sort of wheel, and it's turning me with it, and I didn't even know. I didn't even understand, how powerful that was.
Yeah, so I had to look that up myself. I mean, I've definitely seen parts of that documentary that you're talking about. I don't think I've sat through the whole thing yet, but
Yeah.
that sounds. I should do that definitely.
Yeah, I've sat through it, and that's why everyone thinks that their phones are listening to them, because every time you bring up a topic, next thing you know, it's advertising that particular topic, right?
Yes,
So,
yes, absolutely.
My son talks about that all the time. Oh, I was just talking about this trip. Suddenly I get all these air. It's like, I'm not sure if that's a type of bias that we have. And I imagine it's probably a little bit of both, So, but anyway.
Yeah.
So as we're looking at, looking for the right team members and for our team, another thing I wanted to point out, as far as, we're talking about people that have been there, done that. And when we're looking at small companies and developing companies, one thing that I also want to mention as a cautionary point that I often see in my practice is that when you're hiring somebody that's been there, done that, that's been in a larger organization, and they're bringing that polish, that experience, and so forth into your startup, sometimes they can bring some poor administrative practices with them. And not that they're poor, actually they're very structured, but it may be too structured for the evolution of your company, right? One example, this is, I was recently working with a company that they're growing super fast, super powerful, fast growing technology company, and that is expanding across the globe. And so, and to get ahead of their growth curve, of course, they wanted to hire some of the people that have been there, done that. And they did that. Top notch. They've hired a top notch chief people officer and HR business partners and so forth from S&P 500 or 50 S&P 50 companies, very large companies. But what they do is they bring these certain behaviors with them as well. So expectations on certain types of polish and professionalism, such as our presentations have to be spectacular. They have to have the right, the marketing has to go through marketing, have the right color scheme and the wording and so forth. And we have a certain style, and that can be just and my wife calls it a bouchon in French, right? Which is meaning a bottleneck. And so and so what we need to think about, and smaller companies need to be agile. They need to move quickly. And sometimes when we bring that higher polish, that takes maybe a team of 50 people to put together, a one-person team cannot do that. And so we need to realize that we need to scale back on some things administratively to be able to move forward faster. So I think that's a one big learning that I've seen over and over again in startups in my industry.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Agility is key. I'll tell you, I believe that it is important for fast-growing companies to start ahead of time with putting in place policies procedures, structure, so that they can scale, the business can scale with them. But you're right. I mean, you can't create bottlenecks with a 1 or 2 person company that, for something that you would do with a, 500 or 5,000 person company.
Right.
Agility is definitely key.
Other things that I find is when we're hiring people that have been there, done that, they often have expectations around their pay and their rewards. And so I'm that's definitely my expertise. I often are bridging this with companies. And so small companies are going, well, how do I compete with the Amazons and the Googles and so forth that are offering these huge pay packages and long-term incentives or stock that they grant to their employees that they can actually go into the open market and sell or buy as they wish. And so there's that big question. And I often go back to them and say, that is the reason why we need to, culture is so important. The workforce experience is so important. What do you typically see there, Danica?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I see a lot of that, and you're the compensation expert. That's not my area of expertise, but I often see companies, new companies offering stock options and ownership and things like that. And what I often tell people is, especially in today's world, we've got sort of the great resignation going on right now, and so why is that? Why are people resigning en masse? And what can we do to create, this a workforce or an environment for your people to thrive in? People will take substance over money many times. When I say substance, I mean, is this a good work environment? Is this a healthy work environment? Am I valued for my contributions? What else can you offer me outside of actual pay to compensate me? And so that's when stock options and things like that come in as well.
Yes, I think there's been just a mega shift in the past year about people coming to terms with that. Hey, it's not just about the money. I need to think about what I want to do in my career, my life, and how I'm treated at work, meaning how meaningful my work is. A lot of those things are coming into play, and I think that we've definitely seen a good migration to smaller companies and more purpose-driven companies as a result.
I love that, purpose-driven. Absolutely. And I think the other thing that's important, so before I move on to that, I think people really want to, when you say purpose-driven, they want to feel like they're contributing something of value, and what they're doing is making a lasting impact in the world. When you think about, as big as climate changes and things like that, people want to know that they're contributing something good to the world. And additionally, I think people really want work-life balance. And people are valuing and prioritizing work-life balance over money these days. They just are.
Right. And that flexibility. And that really drives into this entire dialogue that we're having as far as diversity and so forth, with the desire for more work-life balance, with the desire to work from anywhere. I mean, now we have companies are coming to the realization that they should start hiring from everywhere as well, and so that really drives the importance, even more importance, to diversity in having cultural diversity as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Denise, go ahead, Shar.
Oh, I just wanted to say one of the lessons that we learned, though, on that particular topic is that my company, Rocky Mountain Health Advocates, did offer part-time hours, part-time employment with full-time type of pay and benefits. And we had to be very careful with how we posted that position, because people didn't really believe that our company could really offer that in a positive sense, where they could only work 25 to 30 hours a week and still receive that kind of pay and benefits. So we kind of learned the hard way how we posted it, because I think employees are never used to working with an organization that can offer such a great environment. So in a way, we kind of we actually ended up having that be more of a hardship because of the way that we were talking to our new hires about this type of opportunity. So it's a lesson that we learned.
Yeah, and it's so important too. I think I think companies don't count the cost of turnover as much as they should. They don't pay attention to that as much as they should. I mean, it's just so, if you monetize that, you're actually losing more money by having higher turnover than you are in creating some sort of system or some sort of reward that has, that sort of lends to a better work-life balance for your team, to keep them around.
Right.
It's unfortunate.
So recently, I mean, I read a book, A World Without Work by Daniel Susskind. And he talks about how technology and automation is kind of taking over, and how we should respond as company owners. And I found it really fascinating, because it is somewhat, we're starting to see more and more of this trend accelerate as things that are coming into the workplace that are driving this is, for instance, people reluctant to come back into work, right, at those lower levels. And we're finding more ways to automate, cashiers and so forth, self-serve type of situations as a result. So it's kind of driving some of that, and other things are starting to ripple through work as well. I think that we'll see some of that repetitious type work being taken over by either software or other types of technology. And we should be prepared for that. There's also reluctance of people that don't want to work, the 40 hours a week as they have in the past, or they may be looking for something a little bit more flexible, or maybe
Sure.
driving towards that four-day week as we were even playing with before the pandemic. And so I think that these things they'll come into play and start changing the way that we design jobs and flexibility in the workplace.
So wouldn't you agree though, Sam? I think one of my personal learnings being an entrepreneur now is how fast technology has been changing. And so, for example, right now, you and I were just talking about the challenge of keeping all the passwords for my 20 different apps and platforms now. Seriously. And, I'm 51, but, I feel like I'm pretty technically savvy. But, I sit here and think to myself, well, I'm middle-aged here, and I can't even keep up with all the new technology that's supposed to make my job easier, but it seems to change every single day or every other week.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, so for the diversity perspective of different generations, I mean, prior generations just used, Outlook. That was their main thing. Outlook, PowerPoint, Excel. Well, now there's 20 different platforms and apps that we all have to learn to use.
Yes.
And it's really hard to keep up.
I think that's part of the important piece. And when we're hiring people, that we're hiring people that are willing to listen to all different generations and respect them for the strengths that they have.
Right.
We can say that, some of the boomers and Gen X they have a lot of wisdom as far as how things have happened over the years. So they carry a lot of that wisdom. But then also with our millennials and Gen Z and so forth, they carry a lot of knowledge. I mean, the technology is moving at a faster and faster rate all the time. I mean, and if we're not constantly on top of that, then we get left behind, right? And there's no way that everybody can be an expert in every app and every piece of technology out there. And so we do need to leverage the different generations, the different age groups, and appreciate them for the pieces that they do understand. I was just talking to a gentleman this morning who was with a Twitch, which is a social media platform of for gamers and so forth, and there's other things that gamers use to communicate and collaborate online, which is a great teaming exercise, right? But the thought is there's these channels and these different tools that can be used in different ways to inspire teamwork and keep people working together. That that either the older generation says, well, that's just for playing games. I mean, how important is that? But it's serious stuff, right? I mean, there's different tools out there that can enhance our work environment that we need to be mindful of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great topic for another one of your forums.
Yeah.
Just the various age groups that are in the workforce today and what that looks like, and how to improve upon that collaboration between all of those different groups.
Right. Well, I know this has been a really engaging conversation. We are coming towards the top of the hour, though. I do want to acknowledge our speaker for next week. And we do have, let me just go ahead and share my screen here and show Wendy Graham. So Wendy Graham is going to join us once again. She's a consultant that is around, does a lot of consulting around talent management, and she's a TMA expert. She's going to be talking about career architecture and how to define competencies around roles. I mean, right now we were just talking about hiring the right mindset, and some of those pieces that are critical. So what Wendy's going to talk to us is about both the technical competencies and the behavioral competencies that are required in bringing in people that are going to fit well with your team, and also internally when we're looking at our jobs and teaming internally for higher performance. And it's important for us to know what those jobs require and for career pathing and so forth. So Wendy's going to share her knowledge on that important topic. Also, just want to acknowledge our sponsor, TMA. Method. The TMA method is a great assessment tool that businesses can use to get to know their people better. And we were talking about different type of tools today during the forum, such as DISC and so forth. TMA is a global tool that focuses on competencies and behaviors that tell employers what are the passions a person might have that is in your company or aspiring to work at your company. What are their passions? What are their talents? And it actually is the assessment that the person takes opens up a dialogue of positive psychology. So there's no, you're bad at this, you're good at that. I mean, it's more about, what is right for the right situation. And so it's focused on positive psychology. And it's a wonderful tool. If you're interested in learning more or taking an assessment there to try it out, just reach out to me at sam@comteam.net or support@comteam.net. That's fine. And I'll make sure that you get an assessment that we can send your way. All right. So I know that because Jules is typically not here, she's typically would see if we have any questions. If anybody has any questions for Danica, please put them in the chat. If not, then we'll come to a close here today. So Danica, for people to learn more about what you do and to connect with you about any kind of their needs and coaching and so forth, how would they do that?
They can go to the website at www.novusleaf.com. Right on the main page, there is a form that you can fill out that requests what you're looking for and who you want to work with. I have a great team of people that work with me, from other counselors to other coaches and business advisors. So you can select who you want to work with and what you're wanting to do. And then we'll get back to you usually within 2 hours. If you want to see the rest of my team, there's a link at the top, our team. You can go there and everybody's listed there. And if you, beneath each picture is a small button that says Learn More, and you can click on that Learn More button to read their bios.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today, and looking forward to having you on the forum again and talking about some of these other topics that we dove into. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thank
All right.
you.
Well, we'll see everybody next week on the People Strategy Forum. Thank you so much,
Thank
and
you.
have a great week.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.